Today, we're going to talk about the sudden legal and political impacts that Trump's contempt finding in his New York trial is having on his presidential campaign, and I interview Senator Bernie Sanders about his message to young people and progressives who may be moving away from Biden, his thoughts on the Republican slate of millionaire out-of-state candidates running for the Senate, and whether he thinks Marjorie Taylor Greene is losing influence in the GOP. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen, and you're watching No Lie. So there are two big updates here as far as Trump being held in contempt for violating his gag order in his New York criminal trial is concerned. There's a legal update and a political update. So the legal update is this. Since Judge Merchan found Trump in contempt for his first tranche of violations of his gag order, which amounted to a nothing burger of a fine, $9,000, but also a promise to lock him up during the trial for further violations, clearly Donald Trump is spooked because he's made a decently concerted effort to not violate his gag order further. In fact, he's even begun conceding that the gag order won't stop him from testifying, which was basically a lie that he had told earlier.
Thank you very much.
The gag order stop you from testifying?
No, it won't stop me from testifying. The gag order is not for testifying. The gag order stops me from talking about people and responding when they say things about me. We have people saying things about me and I'm not allowed to respond.
Now, as far as this little impromptu courtroom press conference is concerned, it's straight bullshit. The only thing that the gag order prevents him from doing is attacking witnesses and members of the jury. If he can't open his mouth without doing that, then that's not the judge's problem, that's Trump's problem. But more importantly, what it does say is that Trump likely doesn't want to be jailed, isn't goading the judge into revoking his release, as many people thought might be the case, myself included, which, by the way, is not to say that there might not be some merits to that idea as far as Trump is concerned moving forward. I mean, the guy loves nothing more than to present himself as the victim. Sitting in a jail cell would be the ultimate instance of victimhood. Like, dude would be able to send out no less than 5,000 fundraising emails and rally the Sean Hannitys and Judge Jeanines and Laura Ingrams to ramp up the faux outrage to a 10. So I don't think it's off the table as a strategy, but the fact is that Trump doesn't seem like he's super intent on getting himself thrown into jail. If he wanted to, it would be pretty damn easy. It seems like he is at least moderately reticent about employing that tactic. And the reason why is actually the second update, which is focused totally on politics, and that is that Trump is starting to recognize just how weak all of this makes him look. He's now been found in contempt. He was forced to pay a fine, which he did. He was forced to delete his offending posts, which he did. He was forced to acknowledge that he would end up in jail for subsequent violations, which he did. He was forced to change his tune during this mid-trial press conference, which he did. He is not in control here. He isn't calling the shots. He doesn't look strong. He's being ordered around by the judge, and he has no choice but to comply. And the more violations he commits, the more he'll be punished, and the weaker he'll seem. Remember, Trump relies on his branding as a strongman. Nobody tells him what to do, nobody tells him what to say, nobody tells him how to behave, except now, that's not the case. Now he's submitting to all of it. And optics-wise, there is a weakness to that. He's very much at the mercy of a justice system where it rightly shouldn't matter who he is, he still has to follow the rules of this trial. And so all of this is just piercing the bubble that is this image of Trump being in charge. Add in the fact that he couldn't stay awake in the courtroom. He's whining about how cold it is in there. He's complaining about going to his kid's high school graduation, which, by the way, he can do now. He is so lost in the bitching and moaning that he can't even see who he's turned into, which is just the image of weakness. And by teetering on the brink of sitting in a jail cell, I know he's tried to pre-frame this as a Nelson Mandela thing, but even he recognizes what will happen. Behind all of the ranting and the raving and the fundraising emails, he will, at the end of the day, be sitting alone and quietly in a cell. He will have to submit to his punishment and look like the sad, tired, washed up, defeated person that he is. And I think that nothing scares him more than that. So look, again, that's not to say that he won't take a swing for the fences. Maybe he'll need a nice fundraising bump one day and he'll figure out, why not? But more likely, he and his team recognize how badly this is going for him. And because Trump himself is physically incapable of not wallowing in his own victimhood and crying about how aggrieved he is, he will continue to look weak and distance himself from the very trait that actually benefits him the most. And let's be clear, this same reason that it's bad for him is why I'm covering it here. Donald Trump does derive a lot of benefit from his base for what they perceive as strength. Like, I think it looks like him compensating for his raging insecurity, but his fans don't. They think it's just toughness. They think it's him being strong. So the more that I and you all can perpetuate the fact that Trump is weak, the more it pierces that branding that Trump relies on. So don't talk about how he's a strong man, because while the dangers of that might be apparent to the people who hate him, that actually reinforces the very thing that Trump's base likes about him. Instead, talk about how he's not. Talk about how he's sleepy and how he can't stay awake in the courtroom. Talk about how he has no new material. Talk about how he's slurring his words and how his speeches don't make any sense. I cover his nonsensical rally speeches for that exact reason, because it disproves this notion that he's some marketing genius, that he's some master politician. He's not. He's a confused, rambling moron who very much is not in control. And the more people can see that, the better off we'll be. Next up is a preview of my interview with Bernie Sanders. President Biden's now contending with waning enthusiasm from young people and progressives as the result of Gaza and Israel, for example. What do you say to those people who right now feel like they want to punish Biden at the ballot box in November by either voting against him or not voting at all?
Well, Brian, that is maybe the most important question that we can discuss. So let me be clear. I strongly disagree with President Biden over his administration's approach to what's going on in Gaza. In my view, and I think that view is shared by a strong majority of the American people, especially young people, often young people of color, the reality is that while Israel has every right in the world to respond militarily to the terrorist attack by Hamas, they do not have the right to go to war against the entire Palestinian people. And that is precisely what we are seeing right now. I think as we speak, close to 35,000 Palestinians have been killed. Over 77,000 have been wounded. That is more than 5% of the entire population. Infrastructure destroyed, education destroyed, healthcare system destroyed. And right now, we're looking at the possibility of hundreds of thousands of children starving. So I think the president is dead wrong on that issue. And I did my best to make sure, and will continue to do my best to make sure, that Israel does not get U.S. military aid to continue that war. Having said that, I would hope that people, in response to your question, take a deep breath and say, okay, what are our options here? We disagree with Biden on Gaza. We're going to look at Donald Trump. Well, Donald Trump is a pathological liar. Donald Trump is a guy who does not believe that women have a right to control their own bodies. He is somebody who thinks that climate change is a hoax, somebody who has said incredibly bigoted and racist remarks, who wants to give massive tax breaks to billionaires, who wants to throw millions of people off of healthcare. That is not an alternative. What is the alternative? The alternative is to continue to elect progressives to the House and occasionally to the Senate, build a political movement which demands that Biden starts addressing the needs of working people, the environment, and changes his views on foreign policy.
To that point, can you speak about the ability to move Biden versus the ability to move Trump for some folks?
Look, I think both Trump and Biden are good politicians. That's all. And you're in a political moment. They listen to people. If you think that Biden's people are not concerned with the numbers that they are seeing, where young people who used to be supportive of a Democratic nominee are increasingly less supportive, if you think they're not paying attention to that, you'd be dead wrong. So I think we've got to continue the pressure. And in my view, the pressure right now is to say to President Biden, okay, you won your vote to get more military aid to Israel, but you don't have to release that until Israel does A, B, C, and D. And that is, most importantly, end this humanitarian disaster, which could lead to the starvation of huge numbers of people.
Now, to a similar point, we've got an economy right now with some really strong indicators. Inflation is down from where it was. Real wages are up. Employment's at under 4% for the longest stretch in half a century. Stock market's at an all-time high, record job growth. But for a lot of people in this country, they're not feeling its effects. And while inflation is down, for example, prices are still up generally. So how do you approach this issue for folks who simply enough say, I'm paying more at the grocery store. This cereal was cheaper when Donald Trump was in office?
The economy today is stronger than it was when Trump was in office for all of the reasons that you gave. You know, we take it for granted. In my state of Vermont right now, You know what our major economic crisis is right now? It is a labor shortage.
Good problem to have.
Yeah, well, it's not. I mean, it really is impacting our economy. We don't have enough workers, and that is true in many parts of the country. But that is a much better problem to have than to have millions of people who want to work and unable to find jobs. What we have, I think what people are dealing with, and Brian, there are a lot of, people's attitudes are shaped by a lot of things. They are shaped by the pain that we went through with COVID. They're shaped by the fears that we have with regard to climate change. What kind of planet will we have for our kids and our grandchildren? They're shaped by racism and bigotry. They're shaped by a lot of things. And I think right now, when people are looking at the economy, what they are perceiving, I think correctly, is, the economy maybe, it's okay, but it's doing really well for the people on top. And that is a point that we don't make often enough. In fact, the 1% in America, the billionaire class, have never, ever had it so good. Not in the history of this country. More income and wealth inequality than we have ever had. 3 people owning more wealth than the bottom half of American society. Richest people getting much richer. So I think what the president has got to talk about is say, all right, look, we made some progress on the economy. We're rebuilding our infrastructure. That's good. Making some progress, lowering the cost of prescription drugs, an issue I've worked on. That's good. We are forgiving, by the way, a lot of student debt. I don't know if you're aware of it, but we're talking about millions of young people whose lives have been transformed. I talked to a woman, I was at Morgan State a couple of weeks ago, and she was faculty member, $80,000 in debt, removed, transformative for her life. All right, and that is true I talked to people in Vermont, same thing. We got to talk about that. But most importantly, we have got to demand that the president come up with an agenda that takes on powerful special interests, income and wealth inequality. And by the way, I don't know if you've had the occasion to talk to Lena Khan from the FTC. Have you had that occasion?
No, I haven't spoken to her.
It's a worthwhile discussion. She is doing a tremendous job. Best FTC chair we have ever had in breaking up monopolies and standing up for working people. So we have made some progress, but I do understand the reality that today, real inflation accounted for dollars are no better than they were 50 years ago, despite all of the increase in productivity that we've seen.
To watch the full interview with Bernie Sanders, click the thumbnail right here on the screen or check out the interviews playlist on my YouTube channel. You can also listen to the audio version of this episode by clicking that link on the screen. And of course, to see more of my content, the subscribe button's on the screen as well.